For Complex News, I'm Hanuman Welch, and here we are on the other side of a near decade-long investment, with the finale of Game of Thrones having streamed around the world, bringing the series to a close. Was it a satisfying close? Did you feel like all the narrative threads were woven together tightly enough to justify an 8-year investment of your time and energy? Well, if you're one of the 1.3 million and counting people who signed the Change.org petition to have HBO completely reshoot the final season of Game of Thrones, we know where you stand. Personally, I thought the final episode was like most of the final season. Kind of a rushed mess that didn't really seem to make anyone feel like the conclusion was worth the journey. I mean, for real, as soon as I saw this shot, I knew we were all going to be bummed about how this show decided to call it a day. I mean, just the most ham-fisted execution of symbolism, showing Dany becoming a literal dragon as Drogon spread his wings behind her, giving her the appearance of sprouting wings, and fully becoming the Dragon Queen we all knew she was. Up until the last season, of course. As corny as that was, the ending where the now 6 houses of Westeros would meet to democratically elect the next leader of the free world made the whole series feel pointless. Look, after all this, nothing changed. One speech about the power of stories and all 6 of the houses were swayed to give up claims to the right to rule. So really, in the end, absolutely nothing changed except that the Starks now rule in the North and the South and beyond the wall. But don't take my word or the thousands of other fans who promptly canceled their HBO Go subscriptions following the conclusion of Game of Thrones. What did the series creator George R. R. Martin think of the grand finale? Well, taking to his personal website, Martin shared some of his thoughts about the conclusion of the series and how his upcoming books, The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, will differ from the HBO series. How it all end? I hear people asking, the same ending as the show, different? Well, yes and no, and yes and no, and yes and no, and yes and no. I'm working in a very different medium than David Benioff and Dan Weiss. Never forget that. They had 6 hours for this final season. I expect these last 2 books of mine will fill 3,000 manuscripts pages between them before I'm done. And if more pages and chapters and scenes are needed, I'll add them. Book or show, which will be the real ending, it's a silly question. During all of Season 8's highs and lows, it's easy to forget just how far away from the source material the show had actually gotten. Martin's novels are going to play out differently than the end of the show, but it still doesn't do much to smooth over what many fans felt was a really rough landing. And of course, this doesn't mean that we're not getting more Throne stories on HBO. A prequel is already in pre-production, and here's everything that we know about our inevitable return to Westeros. HBO's programming president, Casey Bloys, did a post-Game of Thrones finale chat with The Hollywood Reporter, where he revealed that HBO will shoot the first pilot this summer. I'm not clarifying anything other than yes, we shoot the first pilot in June. There are 2 more in development, and beyond that, there's nothing else to report. We're shooting the pilot in June. You can do the math and figure out when it would be on the air. What I'm not doing is working backwards by saying this has to be on the air by this date. We want to do the best show possible. This is a pilot, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way, which is shooting a pilot. My expectation is it will be great and we'll move forward and it'll move along on a regular TV timetable. We're trying to have a show that feels like its own show within the universe, but we are not trying to replicate the same show. It's not the same characters, it's not the same dynamics. It's not like we're taking the existing show and saying X, Y, and Z worked, so let's do that. Bloys was then asked if everyone's favorite face-stealing assassin would be getting a spin-off anytime in the near future. Nope, 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 no. Part of it is I do want this show, this Game of Thrones, Dan and David show, to be its own thing. I don't want to take characters from this world that they did beautifully and put them off into another world with someone else creating it. I want to let it be the artistic piece they've got. That's one of the reasons why I'm not trying to do the same show over. George has a massive, massive world. There are so many ways in. That's why we're trying to do things that feel distinct and to not try and redo the same show. That's probably one of the reasons why right now a sequel or picking up any of the other characters doesn't make sense for us. So, no Arya spinoff, but HBO did give us a smaller look at what fans can expect from this upcoming prequel. Thrones showrunners D.B. Weiss and David Benioff will not be involved at all with the new endeavor. Considering the reactions to Season 8, this has to come as good news to some, but the creative team behind the original Thrones won't return for the spinoff. In fact, they'll be off writing a series of Star Wars films for Disney. Game of Thrones has never been shy with its vast budgets, and the new series will be no different. Season 8 reportedly cost up to $15 million per episode, and the spin-off seems to be heading for just north of that figure. Francesca Orsi, HBO's senior vice president of drama, said at an INTV conference in Israel last March, quote, $50 million per season would never fly for what we were trying to do. We are going big. So we know it's going to be expensive. HBO is shooting a pilot this summer, and we're not going to see Arya anytime soon. So what the hell are fans actually going to be watching? The new Thrones will take place way before the HBO series. Thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones, the series will be set in the world's fall from the golden age of heroes into its near extinction with the Long Night. Now, the Long Night is legend by the time season 8 comes to a close, and this new spin-off will explore exactly that. The series takes place 8,000 years before the War of Conquest and the Targaryens' domination of Westeros. It will be set when the very first White Walkers nearly wipe out every human on the continent, prompting the founding of the Night's Watch and the construction of the Wall. We also know that Martin won't be directly involved with the writing of the prequel, since there's not much material to draw from to begin with. Martin told the New York Times last year, quote, "If you look at the published books so far, there's really very little material about that. A sentence here, a sentence there, old Nan tells a tale that takes up a paragraph. So Jane had to create the characters, the settings, and some of the events, and we had to look at everything that was said and say, okay, here's what was said at this point. We need to make it consistent to that." We kicked around some ideas and I made some suggestions, but mostly it has been Jane running with it. It's set thousands of years before Game of Thrones. King's Landing does not exist, the Iron Throne does not exist, and there are no dragons there. And this pre-Dragon, post-Age of Heroes series isn't the only one in development over at HBO. Up to another 4 projects are alleged to be in various stages of development. And one thing is certain, AT&T's recent $50 billion acquisition of Time Warner, and by extension HBO, has come with the marching orders of give us more Thrones and get ready to go to war with streaming giants like Netflix, Amazon, and Disney. Have we reached peak Game of Thrones? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and for everything else, subscribe to Complex on YouTube. For Complex News, I'm Hanuman Welch.